I got the question when they ask, is meditation just relaxation? Because when you meditate, you learn to relax, but it is just not only relaxation. First thing, you learn to relax so that you don't get so much pain and numbness so fast. So once you gain your concentration, then you can withstand certain irritation like pain and itchiness or numbness. Meditation is great effort. It is just not sitting there doing nothing, or like a boat just drifting in the ocean, or just let the mind goes where it wants to go. No, meditation needs a lot of efforts, needs strong efforts. As in the 7 factors of enlightenment, it needs the 4 great efforts. Now, effort to direct the mind to a meditation object, that is important. Meditation is just not letting your mind go. Just relax and let the mind go anyway it likes to go. Just be relaxed. It is not so. You need to direct the mind to a meditation object. Because if you don't direct the mind to a meditation object, then the mind goes and gets its own object. In other words, the mind must have an object, and therefore it will anchor on to the objects. And if the object is at random, then it anchors on objects that are unpleasant and cause a lot of irritation and disturbances to the mind. So in other words, in meditation we choose choice object. It's like if you go to a supermarket and you want to buy some apples and there are a lot of variety. You just go there and you just pick what you want. So you may likely to get those apples that are not good quality, that are not tasty or crispy or to your liking. So you make a choice. After you have eaten various types of apples, then you say, okay, this apple is good, it is the best. It's tasty, it's cheap, it is affordable, it is crispy, it's fresh. So you make a choice and you go there to look for this particular apple that you prefer. The same thing in meditation. You need to have a choice object, need a good mental object. If you allow the mind to go everywhere to search for its own object, then you make a bad choice. You may stay on mental objects that cause a lot of suffering, disturbances. So therefore, the effort to direct the mind to a choice object, and this choice object is the meditation object, which you are practicing here, the rising and falling, the body, air element, right? The feeling, your mind, and the Dhamma. So the effort to direct, if you don't use the effort to direct, then it will not stay there. The mind would not stay there. It would prefer to go elsewhere, where it finds comfort in, where it finds a lot of sensual desire, enjoyment. So it will stay, it will go where it wants to go. So it needs great effort to keep on directing the mind back to this meditation object. And why is it a choice object? Why is it a choice object? It's a choice object because, for one, it is a reality object. 2, it is an object that is a neutral object. When you direct to rise and fall, it does not cause the mind to attach or cling. Neither do the mind rejects its object, rise and fall. It is just not pleasant, enjoyable. That's why the mind do not want to stay. But you are able to direct the mind to stay in this object. If you stay long enough, then comes that peacefulness, the passaddhi, peacefulness that you aim for in your meditation, the tranquility, the contentment, the peace of mind, which you can't find in the search and enjoyment of objects. You could enjoy many objects, but it doesn't give you the peace and contentment. After you enjoy one object, then you go for the next object. After you like to see, when you're sick of seeing, then you go for hearing. When you're sick of hearing, you go for eating, for tasting. And you go round and round searching, using your senses to enjoy. But it is not a choice object because it does not produce the contentment and peacefulness and tranquility and satisfaction that is long-lasting. So therefore, the effort to direct. So you need a great effort to constantly bring your mind back to these objects, rising, falling, feeling or watching your mind. So, in other words, you don't just stay on one object, but you stay on the object that is most strongest. Once you feel your feeling is very strong, your itchiness and pain is very strong, then you shift your attention to the pain and the feeling and you stay there. And at the same time, you must also be detached. You just observe, no likes, no dislikes. Then again, the effort to bring back, first the effort to direct, then the effort to bring back. When what? When your mind is dreaming, imagining, when the mind is thinking a lot, or solving problems, or just plain lazy, not working, you are not cultivating, you are not practicing your meditation, you are just sitting there doing nothing, it's just lazy, then the great effort to bring the mind back to work. Now that is important. First to direct there, but it won't stay. So it keeps running. So it likes to dwell in planning, in dreaming. So you know, this is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to bring your effort, direct it back to the rising and falling, to bring it back. The great effort to sustain the mindfulness continuously. Now this is important in the four postures, sitting, standing, walking or lying down. These are the main basic posture. Great effort to sustain. Now if you don't use effort to sustain, then it won't be sustained, right? Your mindfulness becomes very weak, keeps on running. So you have to keep on bringing it back. Don't let your mind just keep on going away. Just let it stay there. If it doesn't want to stay in rise and fall, then stay there in the feeling, stronger object. It doesn't want to stay there, then do walking meditation is a stronger object. Helps to anchor the mind. And when it stays there, try to maintain it. Effort to maintain, and that is the important aspects of the effort that you need to apply, to maintain in your practice, especially in your daily life. In daily life, watch your mind, feeling and the body, and the great effort to develop. Now, when we talk about the concentration and in the balancing of faculties, they say when there is too much concentration, the thing is that if you maintain your mindfulness, then it develops concentration. It doesn't give trouble. But if you are not practicing, cultivating mindfulness, but you are having a strong desire, clinging to just make your mind stay there in your concentration, then if it doesn't stay there, then the mind becomes angry, disappointed. Mind gets just do not want to meditate anymore because you can't get what you want. Can't get your mind to stay there. In our practice of mindfulness, we develop mindfulness with this object one at a time. If it doesn't stay, okay, then we go to the next. Watch the mind. If the mind is drifting, is thinking, okay, try to watch the mind. What is the mind thinking? Is it thinking of home, thinking of dogs, thinking of studies, thinking of your work? Just knowing. In other words, mindfulness is the awareness of what is happening. And the knowing, you must have this knowing to direct, this knowing to apply your meditation. So the mindfulness that arises with this knowing. Mindfulness itself is just mindful. But you must develop this knowing, this knowledge, how to practice in your meditation, how to bring up the mind, how to develop your mind. And must know the direction of what to do next. Now if you do not know what to do next, then you'll find that You do not develop the mental balance. The faculties, for example, you do not know how to balance the faculties, then you find your meditation very tiring, very disturbing. You can't get the peace, you can't get the concentration, and then you give up. Why? Because you do not apply the wisdom. Wisdom needs to be applied. Mindfulness is just being mindful of what is there, this object. It's a wholesome mind that you train your mindfulness in this rise and fall. You're mindful that it's rise and fall, but you must have the wisdom, the knowledge. It is rising, it is falling. Okay, is it just rise and fall? But there is the beginning of this rising. There is this continue of this rising, end of this rising. Now there is mindfulness arises with the wisdom, with the knowing. And again, when it goes to the highest point, it stops. When it can't go higher, what do? It needs to fall. Then the beginning of falling, continue and end. So the mindfulness that should associate with the wisdom. And of course, when you get the concentration, mindfulness is continuous, then the wisdom can penetrate deeper into the objects. When it arises with the 7 factors, for example, like Dhamma Vichaya, when you get deeper, seeing deeper into the objects, now all these 7 factors, when they comes together, that's where the enlightenment is, that's where the truth is revealed. So, the effort that we talk about, the great efforts to bring out those important mental states that need to be developed. Now that is important, the great effort to bring it out. And we have gone through this effort to bring out the 7 factors of the enlightenment. Now if we do not apply the great efforts, then you will be forever rising, falling, and the wisdom do not grow. In other words, the wisdom is important. The wisdom, either it is the knowledge level or it is the insight level that leads to the insight level. And yet, we always start with the basic, pariyati, the knowledge of learning. The knowledge of learning means that we listen, we read the books. If we don't have a good teacher, then we have to study the book. And with a teacher who is experienced and able to explain, then we need to understand. And the teacher says, or the teacher explains that this is what the Buddha says, the 7 factors of enlightenment is important for realization. Then you must have that knowledge. What is these 7 factors of enlightenment? Do you possess them? Do you have them? If you don't, then you need to have the great efforts to bring it out. If you don't bring it out, without these 7 factors developed, you will never achieve the end result, which is the wisdom of realization. We will briefly go through these 7 factors that we have done for those who have missed out on the subject in the previous talk. Now then, of course, the first one is the mindfulness, the effort to bring out the mindfulness. And the second factor is the investigation. In other words, the Dhamma Vichaya, which is very important that in daily life we always, the mind stays on the concepts, it's always on the concept, which is very important for our livelihood, for learning something, for getting along in the world. We must have a lot of knowledge. Knowledge to survive, to have livelihood. So we need to have knowledge how to behave to your boss, to your colleague. We need all this knowledge, and the knowledge of perhaps we need money, and so we need to save, to buy property for security. But that is the worldly knowledge that keeps you alive, that keeps you going, that maintain your body in comfort. But for realization, you need a deeper knowledge. You need to go beyond, to go deeper than just the concept levels of understanding. You need to go to understand the nature, the basic nature itself, like what you are doing in your meditation. What is this basic body? What is this basic mind? How does it work? And the basic is these 4 body elements. So that is where we go deeper than saying this is my body. We go deeper than that. It is consists of, this body is consists of the 4 basic elements. The nature of this body is the air element, is the heat that we experience when we meditate. When rise and fall, we could also experience the heat. We can also experience the hardness and softness, which is the earth element, and so forth. Now once you go deeper to understand the bare nature of this body, then you go beyond concepts. Just not stuck in a concept. Then you see the nature of this body arises the 3 characteristics. You see the impermanence, the changing of this body all the time. Now once you are able to go deeper and see the nature of this body, the changing of this body all the time, then you find that you base the importance of life. For example, if we lay great emphasis and clinging to money, and you find that even with money, you can't stop this changing of the body. The body grows old, the body gets sick, the body decays, the body dies. And you find that money is important, but this body too is important. You need to take care of this body. If you only take care of money and you chase after money and you destroy your health, and even though you get the money, you can't repair your health. You get the best doctor in the world, yet they could not repair your health if you make yourself sick. So you have these 2 knowledge. You have the conventional knowledge and you have the deeper knowledge. And that is important in the realization. That is where your spiritual life is developed. Not only the conventional life, that is important. But on the other hand, the spiritual life too is important. And therefore, you place not only importance in the conventional reality, but also understand the importance of the wisdom, the reality, the enlightenment. In other words, the spiritual life. Then you start to have a balance in your life. That you don't go totally into the worldly life, forgetting your spiritual life. And at the end of your life, you find a lot is missing in your life. Wisdom is missing. Then you get a lot, without wisdom, you get a lot of ignorance, confusion, discontentment, a lot of sorrow, regrets, and therefore a lot of suffering without a good balance of spiritual wisdom. So the energy which is important, that I've explained, the 4 great effort and the joy. You must learn to develop the joy in your spiritual life. You must bring up the joy. If you don't bring up the joy in your meditation, then you can't meditate for long. You must bring up the joy in your meditation. So there needs some wise reflection. You should think that I'm lucky to be human. I got this brain. I'm able to meditate. I'm lucky to be born in the Buddha's period, Sasana, where there is still this method of meditation. Now once you start bringing your mind to these spiritual aspects of your life, then you could develop the joy in your spiritual life. Alright, and Vipassati, the calmness which is important, which I mentioned last week, try to cultivate and maintain, to cultivate and maintain your peacefulness in your daily life activities. Try to maintain the peace in your mind. Try not to be disturbed by objects. Alright? Base important in your calmness. Now, if you base important in your calmness, then the other things will not be so important. Now, if you base important in other things except your calmness, then you find your mind is uncalm all the time because you do not base important in your calmness. You do not develop this calmness of mind. You do not cultivate, which is very important for realization. Now, if the mind is uncalm, it is not peaceful. You could never see things as they are. Mind always disturbed. It's like hot water boiling. They are constantly boiling. You can never see what is in the water. So it must be important. And these 7 factors of enlightenment, Vipassati is important. It must be important on that. It must try to be detached and observe instead of always being pulled into conflict. There are a lot of things in this world that produces conflict because of likes and dislikes. And where there is light, it also produces conflicts. Why does likes produces conflict? When you can't have what you want, then you get disappointed. Then you fight against those people who blocked that you can't get what you think that belongs to you. Then you fight against other people. You blame them for disturbing your happiness or blocking your happiness or what you want in life. So even the likes produce conflicts, and the dislike itself is conflict. Once you come into contact with things that you do not want, if you want sweet, you get sour. At once arises the conflict in your mind. If you want to see something pleasant, at once you see something ugly, at once there arises conflict in your mind. Just as you like to hear something pleasant, and when you come in contact with something unpleasant sound, at once there arises conflict in your mind. And if our mind is constantly living in like a ship floating on the ocean and searching for objects, external objects, without balancing it, then we would not have passaddhi. We would not be able to gain that peacefulness of mind, and with peacefulness comes the contentment. Even though we could get a lot of things that we want in life, yet we feel that we do not have the deep satisfaction and contentment, the deep peacefulness that you get in the passaddhi once you try to maintain your mind, your calmness of mind with this continuous mindfulness, then you could get a very deep peace and contentment. In other words, we should not let our mind constantly be pulled into conflict that disturbs and upsets our mind. So in other words, you should be mindful. Mindful of objects. Just name the objects: pleasant objects, unpleasant objects, neutral objects. Now that is what you do in the practice of Dhammanupassana, the 6 internal and external sense base. So don't forget about your Dhammanupassana. They are important subjects or objects of your meditation. You should direct the object so that these objects do not build up and become very strong, and then they control your mind and you are off balance. Sometimes you get disturbed for a long time, for days, for months. You never have peace of mind or calmness. Just withdraw and stay in the present moment. Now this is important. Just withdraw your mind from the object and bring it back to the present moment. Now every day when you get contact with so much objects and they bombard your senses, you get very, very disturbed. You lost your balance. And no longer with your Noble Eightfold Path. You are totally lost when the object keeps on attacking your mind. So you withdraw. Now what do you withdraw? You withdraw and stay in your present moment. And you look into your present moment. Now what is this present moment? Your mind is constantly thinking. Past and future. Past and the future. What you should do in the future. What are you going to do in the future? And in the past. And how can you learn from your past? And something you anchor on in something. A lot of conflict regarding your past. And it disturbs your mind. And so when you pull your mind back, detach your mind and say, stay in the present. The present is real, rising, falling. The present is real. What is the present? The present is you're still breathing. You should be happy that you're still breathing. You're still alive. You are still able to bring up your mindfulness. You're still able to purify your mind. Now that is very important. For one moment, if you clearly see this arising and disappearing, if you are clearly seeing this one moment of rising and the end of rising, beginning of falling and the end of falling, the Buddha says it is worthwhile living a human life. You're born a human. It is worthwhile being a human. But if you live 100 years as a human and yet being confused, trapped in worldly things and worldly objects, the Buddha says that it is not worth being born a human. Your life is wasted. And what is the teaching of all the Buddhas? To do good. Do good means the 10 types of wholesome things that you do. Avoid evil means that you keep your 5 precepts. Once you keep your precepts, then you avoid killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, and intoxicant. So make sure that you keep your precepts and you purify your mind. How do you purify your mind? When there is no greed, hatred, and delusion arises in your mind. And how is it that there is no greed, hatred, delusion arises in your mind? When you are mindful moment to moment in reality. When you put your mind into this rising and falling, then the mind do not stay to your past. And sometimes the past you anchor on. Now what do you anchor on? You anchor on those things. You anchor on those things that you dislike, a lot of hurt, a lot of blame, things that are blameworthy, things you dislike. You anchor on a lot of things that you should do, you should not do, and that is the past. And what about the future things that we anchor on? Sometimes it gives rise to a lot of fear. What when I grow old? What if I'm sick? What if nobody looks after me? Now you anchor on to something in the future that you are in no control of. You can't control what happened. When I'm old, I'm sick. It's beyond your control. Something that you can't control. Now, if you keep on thinking of the future, what happens if these people don't pay me my rent? What happens if I sell and next month you don't pay me my goods? Then I can't collect money. I can't pay my bank. What happens if I lose my job next month? Now, that is the mind anchoring on the future that you have no control of. It is in the future. It is so uncertain. You can't control. And this type of thoughts brings a lot of restlessness, worries, disturbances, and of course, grief, a lot of fear and sorrow. Now, you withdraw your mind. You must say, I need to have some peace, some calmness. And how could you do it? You withdraw your mind. You bring your mind back to the present. Now, this present moment, you can control this present moment. You are living in this moment to moment. And when you can control, put your mind in purity. And you tell yourself, you are lucky to be alive. You are still breathing. You are not sick. You are not in big trouble. Live tomorrow. Tomorrow, let tomorrow come. But today I'm in control. Right now I'm in control. Right now I'm watching. I'm noting. Rising, falling, rising, falling. In a few moments, as long as your mind stays in the present moment, when you intentionally withdrew your mind from the past and the future, then you have that moments of peace and calmness. And if you're able to maintain it, then the calmness and peace will go very deep inside. And you feel a sense of contentment and happiness arises in your mind. So it is important. If you do not have this passaddhi, do not have this peace and tranquility, then you could not attain wisdom, you could not see things as they really are. And we have the last one, which is the equanimity, right? And how could we maintain, how could we bring about, how could we develop? Great effort to develop and maintain that equanimity, right? So to do that, to maintain that equanimity, you try to see deeper into life, what life is all about. We do not rely too much on what we see, hear, smell, taste and touch. Because these are perceptions that we built up along the way in our life. And if we rely too much on this perception, on these memories, it gives us a lot of problem, because a lot of these perceptions are not what it seems to be. When we think that this is wrong, it could be right. When we think that this is right, it could be wrong. And if we rely too much on the external objects, then we become unstable. So there are times when we withdraw, in the sense that in daily life too, when you're very disturbed, when you hear too much things, then you note they are mere sounds. So the mindfulness, together with the wisdom, so we bring out the mindfulness connected to the wisdom. We see the wisdom of knowing that there is something deeper than just concept. But the ultimate conditioned reality is sound. You come back to your safe ground. And what is the safe ground? The nature of these reality. Sound is vibration, movement. When you go back to the reality of rising and falling, it is peaceful, no concept. What is sound? Sound is movement. And if you go back using your knowledge that it is merely sound, merely movement, just as this movement, external movement, is the same as this movement. It is internal, but with wisdom, you see the nature of this sound that is merely movement, then there is peace in the mind. The mind becomes balanced. Just as seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. Now, if you do it the same way, when you get very disturbed with objects, then you go back to the safe ground. We call it the safe ground. Safe ground means that you are safe. The mind is balanced and safe. You are not hurt, free from harm, free from disturbances, annoying, dissatisfaction. In other words, the mind becomes safe when you bring it back to the safe ground. The nature of form. Now in this meditation, we keep bringing our mind back to this nature, to the safe ground. That is where we could have this balance of mind developed to a very high mental states of development. We call that the mental formation of equanimity, mental balance. Any object that touches the mind, they could not disturb the mind, because the mind has developed to a very high degree of safe ground, very solid, fortified. An object can no longer touch the mind, and that is near to enlightenment. When a person develops to a very high degree of equanimity or mental balance, then he is going into realization, Makkapala, going to see things clearly, experiencing the unconditioned, ultimate, unconditioned reality. And it is go by way of the ultimate conditioned reality. Now, we direct our mind to the ultimate reality, but they are all conditioned. Where there is sound, there is contact, then there is thinking arise. These are all conditioned things. But when we go to the ultimate, then we see the nature of this mind and body itself, nothing else. And it will lead us to realization, to the attainment of the ultimate unconditioned reality. By way of what? By way of the ultimate conditioned reality. By concept, it will never lead to enlightenment. If you read and read and read and listen, you will not get into enlightenment unless you have already developed all your paramis. You have developed the 7 factors of enlightenment, and you do not only listen to concept. Concepts are mere concepts, but with the concept, you experience the reality. It is not just 4 lines that you are enlightened. No, the 4 lines are concept. It is this experience. You do not just see this concept, you see this reality. See this ultimate conditioned reality. the concept that associate with the three characteristics of this nature of mind and body: impermanence, selflessness, and unsatisfactoriness. The Dhamma are concepts, but the enlightenment, using the concept, see into the unconditioned, see into the ultimate conditioned reality that leads to the attainment of Makkaphala, path and resultant. It happens like that. Of course, in theory, it is so hard to understand. But when it happens, it's just like that. Snap the finger, and it is Makkaphala, it is attainment. But just as you see the tip of the iceberg, but you do not see the bottom of the iceberg, the huge iceberg at the bottom, and it builds up to the pinnacle, to the very tip above the water. And you say, oh look, this is the tip, the iceberg. It is very small, but it's huge at the bottom. Now that is what enlightenment is. You just need a snap of the finger for Makkaphala, enlightenment. But the build-up is the effort, the great effort that is needed, the four great effort that is needed to direct the mind, sustain the mind, to develop and maintain, to bring out these mental states that are essential for realization. The Buddha is not bluffing us. The Buddha did not say that you just believe in me and okay, that is alright. You will be forever happy, in happy land, in paradise. No, the Buddha could not lie. The Buddha never lies, cannot lie. Buddha says, this is the truth. To some, it is very simple because they have already built up the base. 1,200 steps. If you already built up 1,199 steps, it's just one step. It is very simple. But if you have not built up the base, then you have to cultivate the base. That is the important. And there's no running away from it. If you don't do it in this life, you have to do it in the next life, future life. Until you have cultivated, then you do not have to come back to be born. Otherwise, life goes on and on and on and on. There's no end to life. No end to birth as long as we have not gained enlightenment. And the Buddha says that if you could have seen you're passing away, you're dying, and the blood that comes up from your body, if you could have seen that, all this blood that comes together is more than the water in the four great oceans. And if you could have seen the dying and the birth and the dying and all these bones, if they do not decay, were to accumulate together, they will be bigger than Mount Meru, the celestial mountains called Mount Meru. Huge mountains, probably bigger than our Mount Everest. A beginning is not to be found in this ever-going birth and death. It is so far in the past, they could never find the starting point of our suffering. And this going on, when they asked the Buddha, is life eternal? The Buddha kept quiet. And is life not eternal? Buddha kept quiet. Is life eternal and not eternal? Buddha kept quiet. Is neither eternal nor not eternal? Buddha kept quiet. And then he shakes his head. If you don't know, say don't know lah. Kept quiet. And then he walks away. Then the Reverend Ananda asked the Buddha, Lord, why don't you answer his question? Buddha said, he's very confused. The more I say, the more he's confused. And the Buddha do not talk without good reason. Buddha talk to enlighten, not to confuse. If you say life is eternal, yes, it is eternal as long as you have not attained enlightenment. Once you attain enlightenment, there is no more life. It's no more suffering. as long as there is enlightenment not realized, Sankhara goes on. So there's no choice. We are born as human and we have the path is still clear. We ought to practice as much as we can, because in future we never know whether we have a chance to come back as human and to practice again. And I'm supposed to go through the 8 ways of arousing effort, arousing energy. And next week I will continue that. And once I finish this, then there will be the last subject on concentration. I will mix it up with the 5 faculties, which is very important for your meditation. You must learn, must really understand the 5 faculties, how you need to apply that in your meditation. All right.